Hi, I'm Joe Fagan, and welcome to this edition of Discover West Orange. This monthly program, sponsored by the Downtown West Orange Alliance, is dedicated to raising awareness and preserving our rich local history. American history may be better known or seem more exciting and adventurous on a national level with familiar-sounding places and names. However, it is made up of local history of countless numbers of smaller places like West Orange, with lesser-known names and supporting roles. This is where it has the most impact on a community, and ironically, where it also has a tendency to become the most forgotten. In commemoration of Black History Month, I would like to examine the life of two local residents whose lives were directly affected by the underlying issue that thrust our nation into civil war. Aunt Betsy Berry was a former slave and lived in nearby East Orange. Anthony Thompson lived on a small farm on Main Street in West Orange, and when he passed away in 1884, he was the last surviving slave of Essex County. On today's program, we will take a closer look at their lives in their own words. Their recollections will help us better understand how the national issue of slavery that once divided our nation actually touched West Orange and Essex County. The American Civil War from 1861 to 1865 had ended slavery, but offered no real sweeping changes or immediate widespread effects on abolishing social prejudices or attitudes towards African Americans. In 1869, 4 years after the war had ended, the 15th Amendment to the Constitution granting freedmen the right to vote still had not been ratified. Freed slaves were powerless and lacked political voice as they tried to assimilate themselves into mainstream society. Abolitionists had been successful by raising the consciousness of public opinion during the period of slavery. But if social change were to take place following slavery, the many injustices being perpetrated against former slaves needed to be brought into sharp focus. Legislation and laws alone would ultimately prove ineffective to those they were designed to protect unless accompanied by refinement of social attitudes. In the years following the Civil War, progress for African Americans were slow and they were faced with many obstacles. Jim Crow laws and segregation were the most prevalent in the Deep South, but ultimately found their way into all aspects of society in some form. It wasn't until the Civil Rights Movement almost 100 years later, with such leaders as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., when real progress was made. The lives of slaves certainly was a dreadful existence during a dismal era in this nation's history. It robbed each individual of their personal identity and freedoms. It also inflicted deep emotional pain by separating many families forever. When examined through the prism of the 21st century, it may be difficult to understand how it was permitted to exist by a nation founded on Christian Judeo beliefs. The Civil War was fought mainly based on the sovereignty of state rights, but the issue of slavery arguably was the principal catalyst. The entire Southern economy at one time was completely dependent upon slave labor. New Jersey and West Orange may seem far removed from the issue of slavery, but it was the last northern state to abolish slavery. These banners along Main Street create a welcoming appeal and can be found all across the Main Street corridor stretching from Eagle Rock, Torrey Corner, St. Mark's, and the Valley. Torrey Corner is at the intersection of Washington and Main Street, and is perhaps one of the oldest sections along Main Street. It was originally called Williamsville, after the Williams family, who were the first settlers in the area. During the American Revolution, those that were loyal to the British Crown were known as Tories. The Williams family were certainly Tories, and the name Torrey Corner, by which it is still known today. This marquee in front of Washington Street School announces Black History Month. And ironically, a most important piece of black history occurred directly across the street from this sign. This is a contemporary picture of Torrey Corner today, and the building on the left, if you see that the facade on the top, it announces that it's the Rosenbaum building from 1915. And this is actual 1915 picture, and I just want to go back so you can see in comparison exactly where it is located. This, of course, is the contemporary view. This is the 1915 view. And what's important about this picture is right over in this corner, just peeking through the trees on the right-hand side, is a small house. This house and farm belonged to Anthony Thompson, who was the last surviving slave of Essex County. And to just give you some perspective, this is an 1890 map, and Washington Street School would be here, and Franklin Avenue, what wasn't there in 1890, would be located there. And Anthony Thompson passed away in 1884, but you can see on the 1890 map exactly where the farm was, and at that time it was in possession of his wife, his second wife, Mrs. Thompson. This is a depiction of what Anthony Thompson and his small house and farm may have looked like at Torrey Corner. Anthony Thompson was born into slavery in Somerset County, New Jersey in 1798. His great-grandmother, whom he never knew, was reported to have been the queen of an African tribe. His mother was taken away from the tribe at a young age and brought to America by an African slave trader. By 1798, she was enslaved and property of the family of the Reverend Philip Dury of the Dutch Reformed Church in Raritan, where Anthony was born. By subsequent sales, both Anthony and his mother became the property of Samuel M. Ward of what was then known as Cranetown and today as Montclair. When Mr. Ward died in 1822, he left in his will that Anthony should be given his freedom. Mr. Ward also left a small amount of money to help Anthony make a life for himself as a free man. Anthony was just 34 at the time he was given his freedom. His mother had previously been freed before Mr. Ward's death. Anthony's mother, however, was incapable to make a life for herself, mostly due to the limitations of old age. It was the custom at that time to sell the poor who were dependent on public charity to the highest bidder. As a free man, Anthony purchased his own mother at public auction for $100 and cared for her until her death. Also as a freed man, Anthony began working for Benjamin Williams at Torrey Corner in West Orange. Williams was a prominent man in the Orange area whose family was among the original settlers. Anthony Thompson, or Uncle Anthony as he was known, was able to make a living over the years by working for 5 generations of the Williams family. He eventually purchased a home that once stood at the present-day corner of Main and Washington Streets at Torrey Corner in West Orange. It was reported that Anthony obtained a fair education, which likely meant that he learned to read and write. Anthony Thompson was married twice but never had any children, and he belonged to the First Presbyterian Church in Orange. 2 years before Uncle Anthony passed away, he and another former slave named Aunt Betsy Berry, living in nearby East Orange, gave an interview to the New York Times. In that interview, they both talked about their recollections about slavery and their lives in New Jersey. When we return from the break, we will be joined in studio by both Uncle Anthony and Aunt Betsy to hear their timeless and relevant message. They will be portrayed in character by Greg and Linda Bullock. Greg and Linda are West Orange residents and founding and active members of the West Orange African Heritage Organization. Greg was just recently named Citizen of the Year at the annual West Orange Chamber of Commerce breakfast. Greg has also worked on the West Orange Human Relations Commission since its inception and has been on the West Orange Zoning Board for 10 years. Greg and Linda will give a contemporary voice to Uncle Anthony and Aunt Betsy in a recreation of an interview originally given to a New York Times reporter in 1882. We'll be back in a moment.
Hi, my name is Megan Brill. I'm the Executive Director with the Downtown Alliance. We're very excited to sponsor Joe Fagan's TV show, Discover West Orange. We hope that you'll find something interesting in the show and want to check it out for yourself downtown. While you're there, we hope you enjoy some coffee or a store that interests you, and come back again real soon.
Mr. Thompson, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you.
Is it okay if I call you Uncle Anthony? I seem to recall that that's what you were best known at.
Oh, sure, sure. Everyone here in the Torrey Corner area has known me for years and years, and everyone refers to me as Uncle Anthony. So,
Okay, I just don't mean any disrespect. Tell us, sir, when were you born?
I was born in 1798 out in the Somerset County.
In Raritan, Somerset County. And how is it you came to be in Essex County?
Oh, my mother and I was sold off to the Still family up in these parts when I was just a little boy, and then later sold to the Ward family in Cranetown after that.
And of course, Cranetown would be current-day Montclair.
Yes.
Did you know your father at all?
I did not. I know that he was out in the Somerset County where I was born, but when my mother and I were sold together to the Still family, I never saw him again.
Of course, it was common in those days for, sadly, for slave families to be separated, and some permanently. How did you obtain your freedom?
Well, when I was a young man working for Mr. Ward, he put in his will that upon his death I would get my freedom. And when he died, I did.
And he passed away in 1832, so you would have been about 34 years old, so
34.
You were still relatively a young man.
Yes, I was.
And where did you settle?
Well, Mr. Ward was kind enough to leave me in his will a sum of money that allowed me to start a life. And I was able to purchase a little farm and build a house here in Torrey Corner.
Torrey Corner in West Orange.
Yes.
And that would have been about the year 1833?
About 1833, that's correct.
Do you remember how much you paid for your house?
Well, I was able to pay $800 for all of the land and that built a house on.
And that was part of the money that Mr. Ward had left you.
Yes, it was.
Uncle Anthony, can you tell us a story of how your mother came to live with you?
Well, she was also in the service of the Ward family, and she was promised to Mrs. Ward as long as she was alive. And when Miss Ward died, my mother, not having any other means to support herself, was sold at auction with the rest of Ms. Ward's property, and was able to get some friends who helped me raise the $100 needed to bid for my mother at auction. I gave it to a young man who was going to do that for me, and he took the money and gambled it away.
Oh, goodness.
And the town folk here were nice enough to let me have my mother, knowing that I had paid him to bid for her.
So your mother came to live with her, and you cared for her for the rest of her life?
Yes, yes.
She was quite old, I imagine.
Yes.
Have you ever seen a slave whipped or beaten?
I have not personally seen any whipped. I've heard some. I've heard noises. I've been told of it. As a young boy, I was fortunate not to be whipped as a young lad, and but didn't see but heard of plenty, especially up in the Quaquannock area,
In Bergen County.
Bergen, and in those areas. Heard a lot of that going on there, and some up on the mountain as well.
Now, you've worked for 5 generations of the Williams family.
Yes.
When you came to Torrey Corner in 1833 in West Orange. How were you treated both as a slave and as a resident of West Orange?
as a young man before my freedom, I was treated fairly well. I was big and strong and could work well and got along with people and was treated well. And then after I got my freedom and purchased my farm, most of the people knew me, and I still worked for the Williams family and other folk here in the area, and so everybody treated me well.
Now, were you ever married?
Yes, I was. I was married 2 times, and my second wife, Harriet, is still here with me now. My first wife name was Priscilla, and she was the daughter of a man we call Fiddler Tom, who was very famous in this area. He was the best fiddler between Newark and the mountains, and whenever he played, people came from all around.
What was West Orange like in your day?
Well, when I was a young lad, it was mostly wilderness and a few farms from the big Newark settlement out to the mountains, and a few taverns along the Bloomfield area and out in what we call the Caldwell area.
Mr. Thompson, Uncle Anthony, what message would you like to tell the people of West Orange today?
I would like to tell, or would wish for children to get the best education that they possibly can. That's most important, and folk here in the area are speaking about building a school somewhere close here in the Torrey Corner area. Folk are talking about it now.
That would be the Washington Street School that will be built across from where your former farm was. Uncle Anthony, everything I've read about you is that you were well respected and well liked within the West Orange community, and I can certainly see the fine gentleman that you are. And I want to thank you for joining us today and doing this interview. Thank you very much, Uncle Anthony.
Thank you.
If anyone would like to contact the show, you can do so online. Here is my email address. It's very simple to remember, Joseph Fagan, my name, @westorangehistory.com. Or if you prefer the old-fashioned way, you can contact me via the Downtown West Orange Alliance at 66 Main Street in West Orange, and of course that's the same address as West Orange Town Hall. Ms. Berry, welcome to the program.
Sir, you don't have to call me Miss Berry. Everybody knows me as Aunt Betsy.
Okay, I just didn't want to any disrespect towards you. Welcome to the show, Aunt Betsy. Where do you live today?
I live in East Orange. Been there now about 40 years in a nice little house.
And are you married?
I was. I'm widowed now. My James, he passed away about 26 years ago. And we had 12 children, but only 5 are still living there.
How do you find life in East Orange?
It's all right, not bad. People treat me pretty good. I don't read nor write, but I do like to hear the Bible read to me. So somebody comes by the house to do that from time to time.
You never learn to read or write.
No, sir.
That's an important message that our young people today should know, that in your time it was customary for slaves to be denied an education. Before you came to East Orange, you lived in Bergen County. Were the slave owners cruel to you in any way?
Oh, those Dutch folks was a mean folk. They treated you terrible, terrible, terrible. They think nothing of beating you over little things.
Now, it's a common misconception that the slave owners in New Jersey weren't as cruel as the slave owners in the South, but apparently from what you're saying, that the Dutch farmers in Bergen County could have been just as cruel as the slaves in the Deep South?
Oh, yes. Yes, sir. I witnessed it.
How about your own family? Were you kept together?
No, we were split up. I didn't know my mother, because she was taken away from me when I was a baby. So I only see my mother in a dream sometimes.
And you hear her inner voice perhaps guiding you through difficult times?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Now, in Bergen County, your master was Henry Jacobus. How were you treated by the Jacobus family?
Well, Master Jacobus treated me all right. The rest of his family members, they didn't really care about me. They just kind of tossed me around like a rag doll. They didn't really care.
Did many of the slaves get any education or were treated any better in Bergen County?
No, not many. Most of them, few and far between. I wanted an education, and I asked Master if I could go to school, and he said, "You're ungrateful." He said, "You mentioned going to school again, getting some learning. I'll show you what it's like behind the barn at the end of a whip." So that was the end of my learning.
He saw your request to learn to read and write as being ungrateful. That is indeed sad. How many slaves did a Dutch farmer have?
Oh, they had anywhere from maybe 3 to up to 20, depending on the size of the farm.
And have you ever been whipped as a slave?
Well, there was one incident when the Jacobus went to church, and the daughter-in-law asked for some Applejack out of the cellar. And it was Sunday. I said, "No, you get it." Well, she went to get the whip, and then I was real big and strong then. I pulled on that dark hair of hers, pulled her down to the floor. When she screamed, I ran off. When the master came back, he said, found out what happened. He said, "I'll be the one doing the whipping around here, not you," talking to the daughter-in-law.
Well, Aunt Betsy, you may have been big and strong physically then, but at age 85, I can still see that you still have some fight in you, if I may say. How did you get your freedom?
Well, it took me about 3 years to get my papers and about $350. I worked for about 50 cents a day, and I just kept putting aside till I was able to get my freedom.
Now, how did you finally get to the Oranges, to East Orange?
Well, when I married James, then we moved there to settle down and raise a family. That's how I ended up in the Orange.
And James himself was a slave for old Doc Pearson in Orange. And did he have to buy himself his freedom as well?
Yes, he did. Took him a little longer. Took him about 5 years after we was married for him to get that freedom and get his papers together, and $500.
$500. What message would you have for the people of West Orange and Essex County today?
Get that learning. Get that schooling. Go to school so you don't have to do what I did. And your life would be a whole lot better.
Well, Aunt Betsy, that is certainly an important and relevant message, and you should know that your struggle and the struggle of your people have paved the way for African Americans today in the 21st century. And on Discover West Orange, you are certainly fondly remembered. And thank you so much for coming in today and sharing your story.
You're welcome.
Most people often like their history to be pure and moral in an immoral world, especially when it comes to the issue of slavery. It certainly was a dismal chapter in our American history, and even touched places like West Orange. It may be easy to say in the year 2014 that we would have been opposed to slavery. However, no one can truly say where they would have stood on this issue in a world driven by 19th century values and social influence. Countless numbers of people likely went to their graves not seeing slavery as wrong because it didn't affect them. Freedom may have come for the slaves following the Civil War in 1865, but the road to true equality was still a century away. If anyone doubts this, they just need to acquaint themselves with the events of the civil rights movement of the 1960s. The story of both Anthony Thompson and Aunt Betsy Berry is a timeless message to be passed on to every new generation, regardless of ethnic background. It underscores the importance of finding our own inner voice to guide us between what is right and wrong on any issue in any century. If we are not too deaf to hear the voices of the past, they will teach us the lesson that our treatment of others will ultimately be the final verdict upon ourselves. For the Downtown West Orange Alliance, I'm Joe Fagan, and I'll see you on Main Street.